Welcome. Today I'm joined by Simon Irausquin. We are here to talk about great ways to make deals. So I have worked a lot of my career with Simon. We've collaborated, we've partnered together across different regions. He's an international speaker, he's a social influencer. He's someone who's really passionate about customer success and enabling really great experiences for our customer. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you for having me here. I'm really honored.
Simon, as we get started, can you do just a little bit of an intro of your background and some of the different roles that you've held?
Yeah, of course. I started as an SAP consultant years ago. It was a long, long time ago. On that role, I started to learn about the world of technology, specifically for HR. Even though I'm industrial engineer and my background was more on the production and managerial side, so spent some good years over the consulting. And then with time, I've been, changing around roles. For example, went from just simple consulting to leading projects globally, right, over countries like Ireland, over South America as well, every time globally. And then from there, project manager. And from there, went into having my own consulting company, which I loved. Then I moved to the United States of America, and I have 15 years on this beautiful country working with cloud services, always SAP, always has been SAP, my track, specifically for human resources. So I've worked for companies like IBM, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and SAP, for example. I'm trying to, always build up the innovation culture and contributing to customer success, which is my passion. My passion, I think, are two things. First, professionally, right? Of course, motivation around the innovation. That's one of my passions. Customer success is important for me, and how customers are really being empowered by someone that comes in and with experience is able to help them thrive and move forward. That's one of my passions. The other passion is the leadership, of course, and that's why I do have my own Instagram page on motivational speaking. I have done additional stuff like, for example, accelerated learning certifications and managing audiences, and also some coaching and mentoring programs. So that's me.
No, it's a tremendous background, spanning being a doer and a builder, and really just how are we aligning the right things to drive customer success. Simon, as we get started, you started your career on the consulting side, and then you've moved into the pre-sales and the sales and the customer success world. Can you talk a little bit about that transition and some of the different perhaps skills you saw between the consulting side, and how that had to change as you moved on to the sales side of the business?
Sure. Uh, there are differences between the consulting role and the solution consultant role. Of course, one is based on delivering and implementing the solution based on the client requirements. The other one, the solution consultant, instead wins business by demonstrating the solution solving business problems. So one is based basically over features and functions, and the other one is complete value messaging. The first one, the consulting role, usually focuses, for example, on project task oriented activities, whereas the solution consultant or the pre-sales is all around investigation and value realization for the customer. The skills are different. The skills are, typically the consulting role will be looking for configuration, testing knowledge, deep solution expertise on workarounds, functions, identifying gaps for the solution. Meanwhile, the pre-sales consultant is a person that needs to have incredible presentation skills, for example, or learn about how to be persuasive within the conversations. Accelerate success is important. Influence the way the pipeline is holding those customers, how their demos is impacting the way customers mm, closes the deal. No, so that's why it is so important and so different. Maybe the consulting role is more over a managerial level, whereas the SC is more at the C level delivery. He needs to have meaningful conversations going from C level, going from managerial level, and operational level. So he has to be all around all the levels. What I love about pre-sales is that you need to be creative. You need to be a learner, a self-learner, investigator, and for me, passionate is one of the other things that's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think when I look at my career, I had a similar transition of I started on the project management training side. You're very in the weeds, very deep. Let me explain exactly how to do every step. And when I made the transition to pre-sales, my first demos were very much like that. I was, wanting to explain everything, how foundationally, how do we build this, and then show you what it looks like. And it was a big aha of, almost having to think about what you're communicating in inverse. How do I start simple and build to complexity? And how do I understand the difference of what needs to be communicated at a pre-sales point? And then as you are getting deeper into the solution and as you get into that consulting arm. Can you talk a little bit about your journey in making that transition from that deep technical consultant with an engineering background into the sales consulting where your messaging had to change and you had to rely on different skills?
Yeah, sure, of course. I remember one of the things I remember from the consulting role was the level of knowledge I needed to have over the systematic thinking and the solutioning the problems, right? It was really tough, and I admire people that works on the consulting role because of that reason. They need to be knowledgeable, but they also need to understand how to work with solutions that really suffices the customer. Then when I moved into the pre-sales, it was a complete different story. First thing that happened was that I had to start learning about how to practice presenting. Right? It was and at the beginning I didn't understand it. Because I was trying always to showcase me. This is what I know. This is how it is done because I know the function, I know the feature, right? Completely different story because the presenting when you are a pre-sales is based on focusing on the audience. So imagine that you are in a theater and you think that the light is going to illuminate you, right? But in pre-sales, it's the other side. It's the other way. I'm sorry. It's the other way. The other way is when the light is really going over the public, going over the audience. So you're trying to understand the audience and see them with your light is different. So presenting what from a pre-sale standpoint is a different story. It's learning how to tell the story. It's an art. The art of the storytelling is important because when you are the pre-sales, your words have the power of making the difference. And that's exactly what we need to understand when we are, for example, having like a pre-sales demo or a pre-sales presentation. Important things that I needed to learn, objection handling, for example, or what happened with a meaningful conversation. What's a meaningful conversation for a C level, for example, or how to improve my presentation skills, not to jump between screens, not to be too on the rush or being persuasive when you're having the conversation, and also let the customer speak. So it's a complete different story. I think being a pre-sales is a person is has been to me a really the best change that happened in my life because it allowed me to identify myself with my audience first. That fills me in because One of the things I love is when customers are having the issues. In this case, for example, when I've done this customer success management roles as well, the ability to understand from a consulting first, and then from a pre-sales afterwards, and then from a customer success at the end. That's an important thing, that what I'm saying right now, because when you are pre-sales, the best thing that can happen to you is that you come from a consulting background, because you do understand the products, you do understand what you're talking about, you have the experience, you understand your audience, you understand the problems, you can talk through them, you can take them to the pain, you know what they have been going on because you have been on those type of experiences or projects. And then from a pre-sale standpoint, you can add value to those pain points, telling them what are the value wages. And if you understand the customer success role, then you will help them with the adoption, providing solutions and additional alternatives, right? That the customers will really, really thank you for. They will
Mhm.
do.
I think it's a fantastic analogy to think about being on a stage. As pre-sales, we're typically in the role because we love to be, up in front of the audience. We love to be presenting. We love to be engaging with our audience. But I think how you talked about the spotlight shifting, and the spotlight really isn't about us. It's really about our audience. So many times I've seen, solution consultants very excited to be on that stage and very concerned about making sure they check all the right boxes and they've performed well. But you're right, it's really only successful when we connect with our audience and we hit the mark with what they're expecting. I would love to dive into a little bit of some of the ways that you've really learned how to best connect with your audience. What are some of the cues? You get up there, you're going into demo, you maybe have an idea of what we're going to talk about, who we're going to meet with, but what are some of the things that stand out to you as kind of those cues to get started?
Yeah. I mean, first thing when you're going to be meeting with the audience, you need or having this type of meetings, you need to learn about the culture or who your customer is. If you're going to be delivering messages, you need to understand how you're going to be delivering them. Understanding, in my case, what's the pain for the customer is going through. If it's something that you can quantify, you can measure or not, so you can talk around those specific numbers. And of course, why? Because the customer needs to understand that you understand their pain, their situation. You're just not there to show off or to tell them how much you know. So the other thing is to also activate like a limbic reaction when you are with your audience. It is important to make your message like resonate with the audience, and always focusing on well, mainly three things. I usually focused on people, impact on people, on process, and on technology. Those are the three things I usually do. So the idea at the end is to obtain the best outcome you can from the audience, to listen to them, and to overcome the obstacles that you may have with them. It has happened to me, for example, I've had episodes where I've had difficult audiences talking to me, or maybe I was not prepared correctly for the presentation. I misunderstood. That can happen to anyone.
It's happened to
Misunderstood.
everybody. I always tell people, expect there's going to be a meeting that you walk in and something's going to go sideways. Somebody new is going to show up. You're going to get thrown a curveball. It's going to happen.
And the best, yes, exactly. And the best thing that can, and that's the usual, because you think you know the customer and suddenly you don't, or you missed something out. And then they or people is reactive, right? Because they have heard things, because they come from their own day to day. They and you don't know what they're going through, right? And what I have done over when this happens is that I start asking questions. I asked them the questions so they are able to first think about what I'm telling them, right? And then I try to identify myself with whatever they are feeling or telling me, right? And that creates empathy. That's one of the things that at the end creates a change. I remember once I was at a Sapphire sitting down. I was an SAP, working at SAP, and this person came to me. I remember he was struggling to get something printed about performance and goals and having these issues. The person was the CIO, the CTO of the company. And then he was completely frustrated. And then I started talking to him. And then I said, but did you know you could do this? Let me show you this. Come here. No, no, I don't have time. No, no, but let me show you. Then I started to have this conversation around how he could improve and why he was maybe doing it wrong. And that's why he was obtaining that result. Well, you could have, I mean, the change that that person had was incredible. That was amazing. He went from being a hater to be like interested in the whole thing. So he said, oh my God, I don't think this is possible. I'm going to talk to my team. I'm going to start doing changes over here. Thank you so much. I think that we need to investigate more on how we can solve these things and what is the functionality that is behind what you're explaining to me. So, I took, this is like the Aikido, right? You took the person's bad mood or attitude, right? And you use the same strength with a positive attitude, right, to make that person change the way he thinks. And this is
You know,
part of managing audiences, kind of.
it's a tremendous principle. I always say people cannot argue with their own conclusions. So asking questions is a great tool. I know in solution consulting, we often are eager to want to solve the problem. We hear a question, we want to jump into the right one. And one of the best tools that I was given in a training was to ask the question, and what else? They're like, oh, I have a problem with this. We're generating this report. I can't do this, this, and this. And what else? Because it is rare that the first thing that is shared is the right problem to solve. And so, how do we really get to that right problem? And how do sometimes we just have our customer be heard? Sometimes our audience just needs to vent. They just need to share something and say, okay, let's talk more about that. You don't have to have the answer. And I think that's a really powerful story that you shared around how asking questions and demonstrating empathy can really transform a difficult customer situation.
Yes, and also be reliable. People can make people see how reliable you are. If you don't have to be the almighty. Sometimes, like I could start, a presentation talking about my background, that I have lived around several countries and that I have years and years doing SAP, more than 30 years. I never say that. It doesn't
How do you
matter.
introduce yourself? I want to hear Simon's introduction.
I don't. I just say, I'm Simon, and I'm here to make you successful and make you understand how we can be your trusted advisor, or I can be your trusted advisor, or something like something simple, because you don't want to be this person that's on top and people's looking at you from below. You want to be someone that's approachable, right? That's why I was saying you have to be reliable as well. So if you don't know anything, you can say, I don't know, but you know what? I'll tell you. Let me investigate, talk to my friends, the experts, and I'll come back to you with an answer, right? You come back with that answer and you add more. When you do that, the customer is going to really come back to you happy. And of course, I know that because that has happened to me a lot, a lot.
I love that my intro is I'm Simon. My job is to help you be successful. That's such a great, simple way to connect with your audience. I see so often our sales teams go in and we lead with our corporate titles, and I'm this role in this line of business, and blah, blah, blah. And that
The-
means nothing to the customer. They don't work for us, so they don't understand what that structure means. And so I think an introduction that is clear about what your job is and how you can partner with them is a great way to start to connect as a human level. So, lots of times in our role in solution consulting, we have to really think about how do we deliver a complicated message. Our technology may be very heavy. What the customer is asking us with a script can often be just more than, they asked for 3 hours of content in 90 minutes. Can you talk a little bit about the intentionality you bring behind how you craft that customer experience and how you think about taking something complex, whether it's a difficult process, a difficult solution, and really kind of thinking about making a memorable customer experience?
Yes. Well, that's one of the things I love about pre-sales, or in general terms, because it's not only about pre-sales. That this applies to any role. You're a customer success manager. I mean, when you go to your customer and you're having the conversation and you bring something different that really hits them hard on what they need, or how they are feeling around the situation, then they will come back to you and trust you. That's exactly what you're looking for. So I build powerful messages. I love that because I usually use quotes. I love quotes because quotes takes us. If a person comes from, like I said before, a day-to-day, stressed environment with a lot of pressure, with a lot of things, you drop a quote that is limbic, that it will make them think, right? And that's like a trigger. You changed from one environment into a different one.
Yeah,
That
you just relax the
puts
tone.
people, yes, exactly, and puts people on alert. That they say, "Wow, let me pay attention to this." So they just forgot what happened before, the day-to-day problem, the problem that they had, the issues they were having, and now they are focusing on you. The other thing would be, creating these compelling sales messages. So I would say ask yourself 5 questions. So I'm going to give you the 5 questions you need to ask yourself to create compelling sales messages. Like, first of all, is think about, is this, the first question would be, is this about a business outcome? First thing, first question. Second question is it tied to a strategic priority on my customer? The other one will be, can I measure this? Because you want to show the person the KPIs. Sometimes I build up a slide about typical statistics, and I search, investigate, and I show them this is what's happening to you. You're not by yourself. A lot of people's having the same problem, but we can help you. I can help you, and this is how I'm going to help you. So the solution needs to be different. The other question, which is the fourth question, would be, am I different? Is it differentiated what I'm going to say, right? And the last one is, who am I impacting? Am I impacting the CHRO? Will he care? Am I impacting the CFO? Will he care? Who's the person that I'm impacting with this message? Those are usually the questions that I make myself when I do this type of value or sales messaging, when I go to a powerful conversation with a customer or
You
a
know, I
piece
think
of.
that's really worth repeating those 5 things. So it's, what's the business outcome?
Mhm.
What's the strategic priority? How do I measure this? Am I different? And who is impacted? It's a great cheat sheet as we think about framing our message, asking those questions. And if I'm not different or if nobody cares, then that's a big red flag as I think about what I'm going to be communicating to my customer. So, we go through those 5 questions as we think about framing the right message, but as a solution consultant, sometimes we're speaking with, the admins, the kind of day-to-day business owners who are going to own the solution. Sometimes we're speaking with executives. Sometimes we've got an industry-focused audience. Can you talk a little bit about how you, after you run through those 5 questions, what are some of the things that you do to tailor different audiences, technical to non-technical, multiple stakeholders coming together? How do you weigh those, factors into your message?
Usually you will have a diverse audience, and as I said before, one of the successes, or one of the key successes for being into these presentations, is understanding your audience. Having technical people, C-level people, managerial people is usual. And the best way of handling this is to ask questions. Be neutral on your statements, right? Have a presentation that is not too technical, that is not too C-level. So it has like a medium type of messaging level that everybody understands. Usually the technical will drop the technical questions, and this is where your experience comes handy. because then you can say, you can start thinking what happened to you, give them an example, right? Even connect what a technical person can be experiencing, and how is that affecting a manager, for example, or a group of people within the organization. And then you connect the C-level saying, and this is why your costs and your revenue is going down, your costs are going up, and you're having issues. So you're talking to the three of them at the same time. They will be identifying themselves at the same time. And of course, you're delivering the message in a really, really differentiated way to each of them. So this is important. Again, errors, if you make some, can become opportunities. They can become opportunities for you. Another important thing that I do is to ask, what are the expectations at the beginning of these meetings, so I understand what is the technical person looking for, what is the C-level looking for, and what is the managerial level or operational level looking for. So, and then I do this, what I just told you. I connect, situations. Make them talk among themselves.
That's a really valuable one. We don't always have to be the one talking.
Yes, I sometimes I ask them, like, how do you feel? How do you feel when you go to these meetings and then you need to talk to someone about the problems that you're having with the software? Nobody's using this in HR, for example, and the technical people is complicated. How are you guys managing yourselves together? And then, of course, they start this conversation, and there are things that you don't have an idea how many things you can get from that conversation that will help you later on to discover, gaps, new things that you didn't know they are lacking of, that they don't have even in written. And you can take that opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I just identified something important, and let me show you something. And then you take that and you can then jump in with any product solution if you identify any need regarding, specific softwares or things that, or any other tool that you can use to, like, help them with the problems that they're having. So this is usually powerful, and that's why it's important to not to talk ourselves too much, like be just ourselves talking and talking, but let the customer do the talking, and of course share the momentum, right, of the meeting.
And it's, as the customer, let the customer talk. There's equally let the customer help solve the problem. I think so often we think if they're bringing me in as the expert, whether I'm a consultant or the solution consultant or the account executive, my job is to solve the problem. And, what you're talking about is a really powerful concept of bringing people together and fostering that joint solution making, because when they have a hand in it, they often have a lot more ownership around really making that happen.
Yeah. And another thing I think it's important is that you have to realize that this is something that I apply to myself when I get into these meetings. I start thinking about this because it's part of what I've learned over the accelerated learning certification that I went through, and that I got, is everybody has a different way of learning. So another way of connecting people is providing different experiences. The way you learn is called metacognition. I don't know if you know the term, but it is the way we learn. Some people learn, maybe for some people it's
Practical
more
or
visual.
visual or auditory. Yeah.
Yes, videos, or yes, exactly. So and if you deliver your presentation in one single way, you're gonna have a problem, because the person that's visual, if they don't see visual, they will get bored. The people that reads, if they don't read something, they will get bored. The people that likes videos or learn through videos, micro learnings, if they don't see something like that, they will get bored. So of course you need to have all of this specific, even auditive videos, materials that you can use, games, for example, depending on the audience, of course, and that will make your presentation memorable, and you will make them connect, which is important, what you're looking for.
And Simon, it's a perfect segue into the topic of really talking about as we think about connecting with different audiences in different ways, embracing creativity. I mean, that's something that I very much through my career and working with you, seen you bring tremendous creativity of bringing in art or music or different ways to really think about the different modes and levels that we can connect with an audience. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you think about creativity with your message and how you often bring kind of experimentation into what you're doing?
Yeah, one time I went to a customer. Sometimes I get crazy with these things. And well, it's what makes a difference. I did like a video about Back to the Future, the Back to the Future movie. And the idea of the video is that the person, Marty is traveling, bringing a message from the future to the owner of the company. And that was really funny. I think it made an impact. Another time, it was a video as well. We made a video around someone cooking a steak, and we talked about how cooking a steak, for example, was so similar to going over a project. Like you have to make sure that you first put the whole seasoning well, prepare everything, then you let it simmer, and then at the end, make sure you certain follow the steps, and at the end, the result is incredible. So this creates, uh, a way of making something that is a day-to-day activity, make it look funny, relatable. People can relate to that, and of course, incredibly memorable. So creativity is
And
important
differentiate it.
because right now, nobody, as I said, nobody is looking for someone that's really the huge boss talking from a stand and everybody listening to it. Not even on my speakings. When I do these speakings around 300 people, right? Even 500 people, I think I've had over an audience. And I use these type of limbics and I love them.
It's a concept of storytelling. The stakes, of we're having these different ingredients. You're taking a concept, you're making an analogy. The story becomes memorable, it becomes relatable. Your audience starts to lean in. And, it's one of those really powerful messaging tools that oftentimes when we think about storytelling, we think about a customer story.
Mm,
And we don't think about other ways that we could tell stories in our demo.
yeah.
You've spent a career doing this for many, many years. As we think about, across that career and the way things are changing now, especially with AI, how are you seeing the evolution of skills and different tools changing what our messaging is and ways that we work or need to be working and learning?
Yes. I think the world is moving towards these next 5 years are going to be impactful. And I always have this conversation with my kids. I have a 24-year-old and an 18 to 19-year-old. And I tell them, that these 5 years are going to be changing the way we think and the way we work. Skills are changing. Definitely, people's going to be working now more in teams. I think that emotional intelligence is important, and the skills related to adoption are really important to have nowadays. There will be constant changes coming on the upcoming years. So those two skills are important, interpersonal skills, and also, of course, the artificial intelligence skills and the technical skills, learning about LLMs, large language models, coding, Python, all of that will be what's required from now on. I think some of those skills are the ones that are going to be needed moving forward.
Simon, as we think about our role, you've talked about how we're a partner to, the sales team, we're a partner to our customer for their success. If you were to kind of share advice to them about how best to work with pre-sales and solution consultants, what advice would you have for sales about how best to work with us? And what advice would you have for customers about how best to leverage us?
Yeah, we are enablers. We are powerful enablers. For sales, I would really people that work with sales. The best way of working with pre-sales is providing the right information, concrete information, so pre-sales can understand the status of the customer, of your customer. Also, always rely on the understanding of the product and the knowledge that the pre-sales brings to the game. And we, as pre-sales, what we do is enabling the game, so the deal close, the engagement is faster, the customer goes into a faster understanding of on the way we can help them. So that's the whole intention of it. We're not lying, we're not saying things that are not true, we're just highlighting the value that that you will have. The same with the adoption side. Even pre-sales can at the adoption stage can help, and from that help, you can have additional, for example, upsales of another products. That's what's happened to me a lot. Even when we are working on renewals for for our customers, I end up having a conversation around things that I know, the new analytical products that has come out to the market, and then they come back saying, "Hey, can we take a look at that?" And then from there, there's another sale. So that's what I think, how pre-sales is and sales can work together, and how sales needs to bring them always to the table. Try to trust on the pre-sales person, because you don't want to bring someone that maybe is not empowering your message when you're doing your demonstration. You want someone that really delivers the message in a different way, in a memorable way, in a powerful way, in a way that everybody's going to see that you are the trusted advisor, that you are the one leading the process, that you are the one that has the knowledge, and that you are the one that's going to take the customer to a successful ending on the process. So that's what I.
Simon, right there, for us to be a trusted advisor to the customer, what you're calling out is we also need to have built that trusted advisor relationship with our sales counterparts. And I think that is often a relationship that we don't invest enough in, of making sure that we've built that trust both ways, of knowing what we're walking into and how we're going to support each other. And we've both seen in the room how much better and stronger it is when we've done the work to build that work, to prepare, to align on expectations and, how roles to be able to deliver better to our
Yeah, that's
customers.
so true. That's so true. I think you are exactly right.
So Simon, as we kind of come to a close here, what are some of the things that you're really passionate about learning about, or if people want to learn more about some of the things that you shared, around crafting the right message, asking better questions, really focusing on customer transformations, what would you suggest?
Yeah, learn about AI, how to use it on your behalf. Do not trust everything you see or you read around AI, but use it to empower your day to day. I think it's important. And now that we are having these agentic kind of bots, right, that's going to help us. They're helping everybody now. Everything is going to get more connected, but make sure that you use it to your advantage. Learn a lot more about it, because that's exactly what's coming. And I think also, besides this, the artificial intelligence, learning a little bit more about how all of this ecosystem connects together. There are incredible tools right now. There are not only typical generative AI, but also there's like all this automation, NA8 and NAN, and some other automation tools are now out to the market, that they are helping organizations on how to build a new way of working, automating things, but also letting people work on some other strategic things. So these are the things that I would focus, and use AI to increase your creativity. And the way I do it is, I usually ask more and more about it. Like, oh, this is so day to day. Come on, give me something. I need something different. I push it. Sometimes I fight, like not fight, but I tell them, I talk to it harsh, like, this is not what I was expecting. Why? How come? I need something. Yes, I need something that's powerful. I need something because this. I need this message to reflect this or this or this or this. So I describe the whole thing. I go further. I try to push it, and it works. It works. So, and also I'm into all this, automation type of course because I think this is exactly what's coming. There's a new set of skills that companies are looking for. So you need to be prepared on all of these skills. So learn everything you can about artificial intelligence so far, as it is right now, and try to go over this training course. There's a lot of material around. Google has a lot of material. Harvard has some free courses that you can take. So stay with the innovation. Nothing's going to happen if you stay there. So
Tremendous advice. Thank you so much, Simon, for joining us today. And thank you
sure.
for sharing all your wisdom.
No, and thank you. Thank you for having me, Katie, and for your invitation. Has been a pleasure for me sharing my experience and things that I have used effectively with the customers to create not only engagement, but also incredible results and making them successful at the end of the day is what makes you successful and then makes you feel good. That's exactly why I enjoy and I'm passionate on what I do.
Perfectly summarized. Our success is when our customers are successful. Thanks.